First of all, I'm very happy to be here. I was in Athens some years ago to present at the media conference, and so we're doing this here. This is about buying reality in the United States. It's based on the book. I realize I shouldn't have put that big a picture up there, but it's a look to see how political communication was occurring in and is occurring in the United States right now. Particularly, I'm an urbanist, and so I'm concerned about local places. And so what I did in the book was to look at a comparison between the coverage of down ballot races, that is below the presidential level, and the presidential race of 2016. That began really as a result of this quote. Les Moonves was the then president of CBS News, and he was in a conference in San Francisco in February 2016. Of course, this is before the primaries were for both the Democratic and the Republican parties. And he said this. He characterized the campaign this way: a circus full of bomb throwing, and he said he hopes it continues. This is a president of a major news organization in the United States. He also said, "Man, you should have. Who would have expected the ride we're all having right now? The money is rolling in, and this is fun." He continued. He said, "It may not be good for America, but it's damn good for CBS." He maybe could have stopped there, but he did not. He said this: "I've never seen anything like this, and it's going to be a very good year for us." And then one more, and this is the phrase that stopped me dead. It's this: "Sorry, it's a terrible thing to say, but bring it on, Donald, bring it on." Keep in mind this quote from February 2016, because we'll come back to a similar thing at the end of the presentation. My concern, the issue then for me was this: how do citizens in local places learn about elections? The role of political ads. Is there a difference between presidential and down ballot campaigns? What role does money play, obviously, and what role does local journalism play? Those were the issues that struck me. By the way, I was concerned as soon as Moonves said what he said. I thought Donald Trump would win the primaries for the Republican nomination, and as it went further, I thought he would win the presidency, given that he understood it to be a reality show. A little context. I was looking at the presentation of ads and use of money in local markets, in local markets, on local television news. And as a bit of context for the US, there are 210 television markets in the US. Every household is in one market or another. They are ranked by the number of television households in the market. So therefore, New York is one. LA is 2, and Chicago is 3, and Philly is 4, owing to the number of television households. So so there's a very prominent local television media system in the US. About just over 1,000 stations present news, but only 34% of them originate their news that they present. That's wrong. Only 34%. That's 66% originate the news they present. The other 34% present news from other places. Stations air about 6 hours of news daily. That's a lot of time to air news. It is a consolidated space, although you see all those reds and greens and so on there. The fact of the matter is about 5 station groups control over 50% of the stations. So it becomes more and more consolidated. That really isn't studied that well. I'm looking at that now. In any event, the question people say to me, well, why local news? Isn't that going? Why local TV news? Isn't that going away? Well, no. For the audience, 18 million average viewers, 9 times larger than CNN, MSNBC, and Fox combined in the evening. It's ubiquity, 6,400 hours broadcast every weekday, over 1,000 stations, and the public on average watches about 2.5 hours a day. Trust, it's still the primary, most trusted source of local political information. The voters. the undecideds are there, and these are people who are most likely to vote. I'll show you that later, but they are also the most likely to vote. There's also as a corollary, a loss of local television, of local newspapers. You see 2,100 papers lost since 2004. 1,800 communities have lost the newspaper without easy access to another source. And unless you think, online is no substitute. 91%, this is Pew, 91% of folks who are concerned about misinformation online. 68% get their news from social media, but 57% of them don't trust it. And actually, they don't get their news from social media. It is a dissemination question. Google does not have journalists. Facebook, Meta, does not have journalists. They take content from other news sources. So when we get this notion of 68% get news from social media, no, that's the way it's disseminated. But beyond the online, local television news is closest to local politics and citizens and to consumers. So there's an accountability question. But the big one is this. That's where the money is. And I'll show you that in an instant. If we look at that, you look up on top, the percentage of people who get community news every day or several times a week from, this is again Pew, if you look at, these are the sources. Always, we're looking at people who always vote or don't always vote. Well, you look at a local blog, you're about 6% of folks get, and 5% get information from a local blog. From listservs, 10 and 7% about voting. Social network sites, 10 and 11. Word of mouth, 36 and 29% of always voters, and 29% of don't always vote. Local newspapers, you see here, 43. Local radio and local television news. 63% of people who always vote get their information from local television news, and almost half of the folks who don't always vote. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking at local television news. The issue is when they look at that, what do they want? And what we found from a post-election study was over half want, over half said that local newscasts rarely or never examine the political ads on their air, meaning looking at the issue, or they mention them, or they examine their veracity. And 88% said they would like that to happen. So the question then is, the research question comes down to examining that local television news content. Of network affiliated stations in 10 markets, comparing presidential and down ballot races in 2016. Let me give you a little bit of information. We compared them along political ads, along political stories, and along the money. Let me show you a little bit of the method. We did a content analysis of over 1,500 broadcasts that occurred between September the 5th and November the 7th, 2016. That's the after Labor Day, really heavy aspect of the campaign. We looked in 10 television markets, 9 of which were in battleground states. That's why we picked them. We looked at 60,000 broadcast elements, meaning commercials and so on and so forth. Of those, 30,000 were stories, as we would understand a story on a local newscast, and about 3,500 of those were political stories, defined as stories that addressed the campaign, either presidential or down ballot. In addition to that, we looked at the ads, and we got a database designed for us that we paid for. We looked at there were 666 unique ads that were aired over 200,000 times over the course of those 64 days from the 5th to the 7th of November. And for those ads, the stations were paid over $220 million. The 39 stations that were in those 10 markets were paid $220 million in 64 days. If we look at some of the results quickly, political ads and money went to down ballot races by far. Let me show you. The down ballot is the orange. If you look at the presidential side, that 31% of ads, 34% of ad revenue, about a third went to presidential. Well, obviously the corollary is, oh, I can't see it here, but you have 69% of ads and 66% of ad revenue. So just think about that. The money and the ads are going to the down ballot, right? If we look at that story type, meaning what kind of stories were these local television programs offering during this 2 months in the middle of a white hot presidential race, that fires and accidents, 8% of broadcast time. That's the metric. A political story was about 13%, meaning those directed to the campaign. Crime was 16%, political ads another 16%, public issues 20%. I separated out crime and public issues because crime was so prominent. Public issues is every other public issue, health, poverty, unemployment, whatever have you, in the environment, it's all there. But soft news still, human interest stories were still the most prominent, even in a white hot campaign, and they virtually doubled the number of political stories. We take that red of political stories, we want to look at what kinds of political stories were there. And I say up here, it's a nationalized journalism, and I hope to make that clear here, that among those political stories, there were five. There was a campaign event, a local status report, in which a local reporter summarized the status of the campaign. A national status report, the same thing. A national reporter summarized the campaign. Issue mentioned exam says that—that's a story in which the issues that were raised by the campaigns were mentioned, or the veracity of the ad was examined. And you'll see the one of the vans of one of the candidates was set on fire. That's among the other things. Okay, but you see this if you look at presidential versus down ballot. That the red is where you really want to look at, and the number of minutes that were devoted to other stories, they were still at the presidential level. Same with if we're going to examine any issue or anything like that. Again, almost over twice directed to the presidential level. National status report, you could see that almost over 10 times, but you can see that to a point. Even at the local status report, even when they're talking, there's a local reporter talking about the status of the campaign. The reporter was talking about the presidential campaign and not the down ballot campaign. And same with campaign event. You can't see it here, but the same with campaign event. What they covered was a campaign event, a presidential race campaign event. Mike Pence is going to be at so-and-so stadium at 3 o'clock for a rally. That's what you got, rather than down ballot, meaning down ballot for Congress or for the Senate or the House or even governorships and those things. So what you see is this nationalized journalism, right? Okay. If you look at and this is the crux of the book in many ways. If you look at the imbalance, and this is what I call bought reality. If we look at the down ballot and the presidential races along political ads, political ad money, and political stories, we see again what we saw in the graph. In terms of the ads, over 2/3 to down ballot. In terms of the money, 2/3 to down ballot. In terms of political stories, meaning directed to the campaign, directly to the campaign, we have that. 87% of those stories were directed to the presidential race versus only 13%. And it is that space that I call bought reality. Let me give you a little bit of information that at the presidential level, Hillary Clinton was responsible for 75% of the ads, 75%. And Trump on the other side, again, 25%. Yet he won by electoral votes. She still won in terms of the popular vote by 3 million votes. But Trump during that time got what was called the equivalent of $5 billion, billion dollars in what's called earned media. That is to say that the media firms would cover his comments about almost anything before they even covered the issue about which he was commenting. For example, his tweets that were in response to an opponent's policy suggestion were covered before the policy suggestion was covered. I said it was a reality show. CNN made $1 billion in the 2016 presidential election. And so now that 75-25 occurred at the presidential level. At the down ballot level, in every instance, the candidate that had more ads and more money, presented more ads and more money, won. So the calculus of money and ads directed at a race, down ballot race, won. And so, and the argument I'm making is that there was no journalism in that space between 66% and 13% to offset the political reality that was offered by the ads. In 2020, that continued. Local TV dominated political ad space. You'll see it here. Still 63%. The green is local television. There's digital. Digital grew to about 29%. Except we'll talk about that. But you see the distribution of where the money goes, right? And the ads here. And even if we look at then 2022, what we see here again, it continues. 2018 and 2022 are midterms. Normally they have less ads in midterms. In 2020, you'll see that the total was about $9.5 billion. Right now, the 2022 midterm is we know will surpass that. A midterm will surpass that, and we aren't even into the real political ad season, which is going to occur after Labor Day. Again, local television, broadcast TV is still the prominent one. You see it, the green. So the notion that somehow it's going to go away simply is not borne out by the data. So again, the question then is, why local television? It's non-ideological. Again, this is a system that we have here that we don't have, that is not in most countries. It's non-ideological. It reaches all the voters in the district. Unlike social media and unlike cable, it reaches all the voters in the district by definition. Online does not replace it. People say here, over half say social media should not allow political ads. And there's a consumption pattern with local television news. That is to say that if you, in order to see story 2 and 3, you must see story 1. Same thing with political ads. As political ads occur, you will see 1, 2, 3, and 4 sometimes, and they're spouting realities that are simply not reconcilable. But you do watch them because you watch local television in a series. You can't skip to the next story. And it has been so successful that news programs have they've added news programs in order to get some more ad inventory. Gregory, you have a question? Should I stop? Okay, let me.
I will ask the question later.
Oh, okay, very well. Thank you. Good to hear from you. So, and the question then is, why does it look this way, right? And I'm offering three approaches. One is called insecure majorities. Francis Lee coined this term, and I think it's wonderful. Over the past 30 years,
you have listened to me. You have 2 more minutes.
Excuse me?
You have 2 more minutes left.
Okay, I'll be done. insecure majorities that over the past 30 years, the national institutions have been up for grabs. And so there's no incentive to compromise. You have a campaign finance system that drives all decisions, virtually guarantees the insecure political system. And you have a media system that makes a whole lot of money, given the first two points. The implications are political ads will remain dominant, a method to convey. They will move online, but they will not be dominant. Consolidation will continue among television because they're making a lot of money. And political information will be increasingly partisan, increasingly overwhelming. And this notion of trust me, move from trust me to show me. The big thing here is believing is seeing, not the other way around. All of the stuff that we've seen in the January 6th hearings about Donald Trump really have not moved the needle among Trump's supporters. Remember, I said what Les Moonves said at the beginning. This is Chris Ripley, CEO of the second largest broadcast group in the country. This is May 22. This is 2 months ago. He said this: money raised equals money spent. Money never gets returned. There's a lot of money chasing politics right now. This is 2 months ago, folks. He says this: on the one hand, I lament that we're in the political environment that we are, but it's very good for business. We have learned nothing. There's my email. I'm happy to send this to you for as folks would like. But I was happy to be here. I'll stop so I don't go over time. Thanks very much.
Many thanks, Professor Yanich, for the presentation. And now I see that we have a question from the online speakers, Professor Papanikos.
Okay, Olga, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, excellent. Nice to see you again after 10 years. I think was the last time that we had a contact. Thanks God we are all healthy and alive, the most important thing.
Yeah,
now, I guess what you are saying is money matters for elections.
Yes.
Okay. Now, my question is, I have two questions on that. And of course, you emphasize, and I agree with you, because I'm trying to do some comparisons, the local media are more important. Is that the message that you convey to us?
Yes, that is.
Yeah, so I summarize it pretty well. Now, I have two things, two questions. One is whether we have data from other countries. I mean, what you are saying fits well what is going on in a small country around the world, which is Greece and Athens. I'm not sure if it fits well other European countries, but my guess is this is a general model, a model that can be applied to many other countries. But being a statistician, I would like to know whether the money matters issue, the hypothesis, is it linear? I'm going to explain that, or non-linear. That means, or even changes the sign. For example, I spend a lot of money. I had a discussion yesterday with an ex-minister, and I asked him, if you want, because we're going to have elections, if you want to be elected in a district that is very rich, how much money you have to spend? And then it depends. But it is possible that in the beginning, as you spend more and more money and people know you, because this is the importance of the information technology, especially if you are a candidate that they don't know you. So that's a positive effect. But at a certain point, it reaches a maximum, and then it might counter-react. So you get a negative result. Have you ever thought about that? If I had a model, I would say it's linear. If I double, in other words, the money spent, do I get double votes?
No. As far as it's really hard. As far as I know, Gregory, it's hard to make that direct linear connection. That is, however, but you are very right in terms of getting folks to know you, right? And so that the money is used as a matter of fact, what they say in terms of the decision making, looking at local television news, right, is that there are I guess 4 or 5 steps. You learn about the candidate. You learn the candidate exists, right? Then you learn some information about the candidate. You make some decision about whether you're going to pursue more information, and then you make the decision to vote. What we find is that local TV news is a very important factor in that process. So by extension, if folks know you more often, that's exactly what happened with the election for governor in state of Pennsylvania, next door neighbor to us. Very early, Tom Wolf started very early. They didn't know who he was, but very early he made himself a player, and it took money to do that. The same way with Michael Bloomberg, and I just got the other guy's name, who were not involved at all on the debates, right?
Yeah.
And they combined, they spent $500 million. And someone said, well, wait a second, they didn't win the presidency, so they failed. But just the opposite. Their $500 million got them in the conversation. The fact that neither one became president is not the issue. I think people are using the wrong metric. But no one knew these guys really, okay, at a national level. And they spent Tom. Anyway, I have it in the book. Anyway, but they spent $500 million.
No.
Okay? Now, you and I, if we spend $500 million, we could be in the same conversation, whether we had something good to say or not. Okay. The fact of the matter is, okay,
people know us.
Right. Newt Gingrich, as a matter of fact, one of the people who had already been out of a race in 2016 by the primary in South Carolina. He had one very rich supporter who gave him enough money to still do ads in South Carolina. No. He lost, but he should have pulled out, weeks before that, but he had the money to stay in. No. So it is about money. I mean, that's the 2010 Citizens United decision by the U.S. Supreme Court changed everything.
And if there is a correlation, I agree with you. But if there is a correlation, let's say, it would be interesting to see how money, just I'm thinking, because I'm advising some candidates in Greece, and I have a small background on that, how money relates to the issue. We say in marketing or in political marketing, you cannot sell something, no matter how much money you have, if it doesn't worth anything. I mean, it's a waste of money. But is there any correlation? Like, you maximize the money that you spend by selecting the appropriate issues and positions to various issues? No.
Yeah, but except none of that would matter if you didn't have a way to get it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and people say, Twitter. No. Trump was a one-off. Trump. I could say, Trump was a one-off in terms of. I mean, he didn't care. He still doesn't care what he says, right? Yeah. And that is fodder. That is fodder for news. While he was the president, while he was, I'm sure BBC would do the same thing. While he was the president, you would have NPR it would drive me nuts. Begin by saying, I would listen to it in the morning. The president tweeted so-and-so this morning at 5:30. First of all, he didn't tweet it. Number one. Number two, it was tweeted by somebody, but it was his positions, knowing that he could control the news narrative because it was freaking crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Danilo. I hope to see you next year in Athens if you have time.
Me too. I didn't think it was this long, Gregory. Oh, damn it. That's way too long. In any event, I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you both. And I see Mr. Pettinato would like to ask or comment on something.
Yeah, hello, you hear me?
Hi, yeah, how are you?
Oh, fine, thank you for your interesting presentation. I'm afraid I don't understand one thing. So you describe the local media news as much more used, but still less ideological, so less polarized. While what I'm reading, and I'm not an expert, what I'm reading is that the political debate in the United States is getting much more polarized. So I see that there is a contradiction there. How do you explain it?
Oh no, yes, oh, absolutely. The conversation is much more polarized. I'm talking about local television news as a program, Thomas. As a program, they are non-ideological. They're just going to present. You saw they presented soft news, right?
Mhm.
Soft news and some crime and the human interest story. No. As a program, no, they are not ideological. That's the. As a matter of fact, it's one of the places that is not ideological, and but the large you rarely get you rarely get a panel discussion on local television news about some issue. You don't get that. Okay,
I see.
You have a series of stories. Now, what you do have, what you do have is when there's a discussion of when I say nationalized journalism, nationalized politics, what you have for these down ballot races, folks were saying you have to vote for me for Congress because now that will affect who controls the Congress. Forget the local issues, right? You need to vote for me for Congress so that the Democrats don't take it over or so the Republicans don't take it over. So that's nationalized politics. Okay, you have that, but in terms of the content of local television news, it is non-ideological. First of all, there's no money in that, Thomas. Okay, what people want the latest crime story or the weather, particularly the weather, right? Okay, and so the last thing you want to do is take a position one way or the other to undo that audience base. So as an institution, it's non-ideological. That said, the only place where it does become ideological is with Sinclair. I go through that, but it is they who are much more conservative, and they try to push that on their local television stations, about 185 of them, and the stations push back.
Okay, I see. That's clear. I add another element. Then, would you say that local television could maybe in the future play a role in the depolarization of the debate, or not? It's not their mission and will never be.
Right. It's not their mission. No. They'll go where the money is. For example, the argument is that, that one of the reasons why I wanted to see if they looked at the ads themselves, they examined the veracity of the ad, right? Well, why would you do that? Why would you bite the hand that feeds you? What local television says is, okay, this ad says the world is flat, right? So they'll take the money to do that. And they'll wait for the money from the other folks to say the world is round. They make money two ways. Okay. So they are not going to take the position of trying to argue what the truth is there. Right.
As a coincidence, Danilo, as a coincidence, just a week ago, we had a discussion. We were laughing that 30% of the Americans think that the Earth is flat. And, which, by the way, I told them as an economist, is a good approximation. I mean, a good approximation is to assume that Earth is flat. So it's not a bad assumption.
That's right. I tell my students in my research class, I say, the approach first was the Earth was flat, and the question is, how would we examine that? And I would say, just send a boat. There's very, very, very brave people, and send them in a boat, and say you sail until you can't see the shore, and then we tell them to come back. And if they come back, by definition, the world is at least curved. Right. Okay. If they didn't come back, either they fell off the edge or they got eaten by whatever have you, kind of stuff. All right. But I tell them there is an empirical and logical solution to that dilemma. But you're right. I mean, unfortunately, and part of I shouldn't go too. Part of that is you have what's called the journalism of affirmation. You tell me what you want to hear, and I'll take that in. That I'll report that, and then you'll tell me whether or not what I just reported to you is what you want to hear. Okay. That Donald Trump did not conspire did not conspire to overthrow the government.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me that, so I'm going to tell you that. Right? Okay. I don't know if any of you have been following the January 6th, but it is.
We follow.
It is more scary. I was scared that day, but it is more scary now because there are still. I just saw yesterday. There's still folks that that argued that yeah, but he still won. Well, first of all, he didn't. But the argument yet, if he thinks he won, then the coup was okay. Think about that logic, right? Okay, if it's okay with you that you think he won, and so then by definition, then the coup was okay. Anyway, I think
usually, Danilo, usually a coup can be justified in quotation marks if you win and you are in the opposition. You see, it makes some sense because you have a semi-dictator. You win the election. We have that in different countries. And then the dictator, semi-dictator, does not allow you to take power that you won. But here is exactly the opposite. He was in power.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes it very awkward, to say the least.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is that the institution is held. Okay. But and the threat was even more concerted than we thought. That's the point. That's the point. That even under that threat, the institutions still held, but still there are these approaches, in this country and in others, right? Okay. I remember. I'm taking too much time. I'm sorry. When John Meacham wrote his book about better angels and so on, that we'd been here before and so on, the Civil War and so on. He was here at the university talking with President Biden, and I said to him, Mr. Meacham, I disagree. We've been in worse places, but in those worse places, the institutions that we had in place were offered as a way to fix it. That's not the case now. The rule of law is questioned, but beyond that, we have a political, rather we have a communication system that does not allow even time to think about it. I tell my students all the time when they're overwhelmed with the news is just damn turn it off.
Yeah. Okay. I think in Athens it's late in the afternoon. So we are preparing for dinner. So you are invited, but you cannot come, I guess.
I wish I were there to have it with you. I do.
Okay. See you next year then. Okay.
Very well.
Thank
Take
you all.
care.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.